All right, so hi everybody, and thanks for joining me. I'm Dor from Intuition Robotics, and indeed we're going to talk through the prism of Ellie Q, our product targeting the elderly, how it is affected through COVID, and in general, our opinion on how technology can be helpful. So just for those of you that don't know us, we are a 4.5-year-old company based in Israel with offices in San Francisco. We're backed by investors in Israel, in California, in Japan, in China. Our crowd is a big supporter from our very beginning. We are 82 people. The vast majority are building the product, so they're in R&D or in product. And when you dive into who those people are, they're basically split between deep tech type people working on neuroscience and cognitive computing and machine learning and so on, and people that study the human experience. These are cognitive psychologists. A new field in academia called HRI, human robotic interaction, the study of how a robot or an agent can affect people's feelings and behaviors, and then experienced people that write content and scripts and animations. And when you put those two things together, you end up with what we call digital companions. And our mission is to create enduring relations or relationships between humans and machines that actually affect people's behaviors and people's emotions. And we decided to start that with improving the life of our elders. Now, how does that all tie into COVID? Well, we've been dealing with the issue of trying to improve or reduce the effects of loneliness and social isolation for quite a long time. And we've done it through this product that you see here, Ellie Q, which is a proactive multimodal presence in people's homes. She has the ability to express herself, to move around, to use lights as a modality. She has different sensors as input. She has a screen. But the main thing is that she's proactive and she's embodied in a character. Now, many of you know that even before COVID, loneliness of older adults has been a huge issue facing modern society. We're talking about roughly 50% of the population self-professing that they feel lonely and isolated. In the UK, about 50% of the older adults talk to one human a week or less. And that leads to very significant health issues. But of course, with COVID, that has been exasperated even more when people can't leave the home, the few visitors they had couldn't come in, and so on. And we're going to dive in today a little bit on how they perceive this entity in their home, on what happened and what changed during COVID, and a bit of an opinion if we think technology actually has a role to play in alleviating these type of issues. And of course, as a company, we're not dealing with vaccines, but we are dealing with the social effects that the pandemic has to us, which is a new part of our existence for sure. It is important to say, though, as pretty obvious from the stats I gave you, that this state of being isolated, of being alone for the elderly population has existed before COVID and will continue after COVID. Just the temperature of it has been increased. So really briefly, what does Ellie Q do for people beyond the fact that she's proactive and has a character and multimodal and so on? She has 4 main buckets of functions, if you will. The first is companionship, being a presence they can converse with and so on. We'll go into detail on that one because it's really relevant for COVID. She has an ability to help loved ones connect with the older adult and vice versa, entertainment capabilities, just utilities on helping them manage their day, and a relatively important emphasis on wellness, whether that's mindfulness, meditation, or whether that's cognitive gains and so on to stay sharp, and basically help reduce anxiety and help people stay mentally fit. So over the last year or so, we've seen Ellie Q deployed in people's homes in a beta program. You can see some of the stats here. It's scaled. Every home we went to, we tested for longevity. So at least 3 months per home. You can see quite a lot of days in people's homes. The youngest in the last year, the youngest person that was with Ellie Q was 78. The oldest was 98. So we're talking about truly the elderly. You can see that there's improvement in their quality of life, but I think what's important is how people feel to have a cognitive device, fake device, a device in their home. You can see an interesting quote here about one of the users, really thrilled about her initiating the interaction, feeling that somebody is concerned with her well-being, and that she does not only need to initiate interactions as she does with her cat. If you break that down a little bit, what we've seen together with our partners is an average of 6.3 interactions per day after a long period of time, after reducing the honeymoon period of the first 10 days where you see a lot of unnatural activity. And you see that the usage is split relatively evenly between conversation, entertainment, and information services, with about a little under 2% for wellness activity, but of course the impact of that is much higher than its percentage of interactions. You can see that also the type of interactions are basically split between proactive and reactive interactions. When we say proactive, we mean that the agent initiates the interaction, meaning you walk into the home and all of a sudden Ellie Q starts, or you walk into a room and all of a sudden Ellie Q wakes up, says good morning, asks you a question, tells you some interesting fact, etc. And this goes all into kind of the basic behaviors of the product and how people feel and the impact it has. So first of all, she's always there and always on. It's not like an app that you turn on or off. She's an entity that lives usually in the living room between two couches or so, and is always available, always there, inputting sensory input, and then using that to decide if she should act right now, if she should engage the user or not. The experience is highly customized to the individual, trying to understand when is the right time, what is the right activity out of her possible activities to promote. And even if she decides to say something as simple as good morning, she has a myriad of options on how to say that it will be most relevant to user A versus user B in that specific time. We mentioned that she initiates the interactions by being proactive. And then she really tries to teach new things throughout the day to promote wellness and healthy living. She uses a lot of humor as a baseline of her character, which alleviates the mood quite often. In certain topics of interest, we do multi-turn conversations around how people slept, how they feel, what they had to eat, and so on. And then she also uses multiple modalities. She doesn't always talk. She combines talking at the appropriate time with looking at you, with looking at the screen, with making body language gestures that people can intuitively understand, using lights and sound effects as modalities as well. What this leads to is our users feel like Ellie Q is an entity and not a device. She's not a human, she's not alive, but she's not a microwave either. She's an entity, and they end up building a relationship in that entity. They feel that she takes an interest in them. They feel that she gives them a feeling of acknowledgement, meaning when they walk into a space, she notices that and reacts to that. And for people that are truly alone, almost like in solitary confinement, that is super, super important. She has the ability to remember what you told her and to reference it back in follow-up conversations, which makes it feel like she understands me, okay, like she cares. Using humor to lighten the mood is extremely effective. We see that things like meditation and mindfulness are really strong in reducing stress. And they feel like she takes an active effort to try to enrich their day and improve their day. An interesting way of looking at how people feel with her at home is what they tell to the robot, meaning this is not what the robot says to them, but when they approach her, things they say to her. And you can see this is different from what you would say to a device, and it's consistent. Whether it's sharing things like how you slept, or whether it's providing gratitude, or whether it's wondering if she's mad at them because she changed her behavior, or whether it's updating her that they're going to go out for a few minutes and come back to another room or leaving the house. These are not things one says to a device, and yet they happen every single day in the relationship between Ellie Q and humans. Now, when we look into COVID, not surprisingly, our customers or our users are telling us that they find it highly disruptive and even further isolating. We've seen them take action in building an active routine, meaning they will try to fill up their day with structure. between this time and this time, I will hear the news. Between this time and this time, I will go and do my bills. Between this time and this time, I will go and talk to my family or answer email. And they really are trying to create structure, because otherwise night blends into day, et cetera, et cetera. We've all experienced it, but it's much worse when people live by themselves and have very little interactions with the outside world. We also saw a big change in willingness to adopt technology. And I'm sure all of us have seen our parents, our grandparents, or indeed, if we're older, have taken a bigger effort ourselves to learn how to Zoom and communicate with our grandkids that way. We've also seen something really interesting in the data before. We saw that there is quite a difference between our urban users and our rural users, where people in urban areas that are part of a community, have a coffee place downstairs, are right next to the concert hall, et cetera, are, have different usage patterns with Ellie Q. But due to COVID, when everybody is isolated, we see that the urban areas have a much closer user profile than their to the rural areas than before. What's also interesting is when you look at the actual usage patterns in COVID, you see that it roughly didn't change much. A little bit more on information services, obviously consuming news a lot more, a little bit more on entertainment to get some relief, okay, whether it's trivia or whether it's listening to music or seeing interesting videos that Ellie Q offers by education. But what's fascinating to us is that when we interview our users, they feel like they're using Ellie Q a lot more. They feel like they're saying a lot more often yes to her proactive suggestions, even though the data doesn't really reflect that. And our best understanding of that is that the same activities become just more meaningful when people are isolated. They're using her in a similar way, but it just feels more important. It meets a bigger need than it did before as they're further and further isolated. Some interesting things that we saw people tell Ellie Q. Obviously, they're asking about COVID. Tell me about the symptoms. Tell me about the virus. Who has it in my neighborhood? What is the latest infection rate? Stuff like that. But then you can see again, very similar to what we saw before, projection. Ellie Q, are you afraid? Ellie Q, can you get sick? Can you catch the virus? Of course, they're asking her to be active in helping them keep to the rules, right? Wear a mask, wash their hands, etc., etc. But they really see her as a teammate of sort in this activity that's taking place. And I'd like to end with two things. Firstly, some of the quotes we're seeing, and to me, it's very, very clear if technology can help the elderly. I think there's a definite yes. Not just us, there are many people that are taking this on. I think it's important to mention, as I mentioned before, that this state of isolation is going to stay when people leave their homes. The rest of us leave our homes. The older adults are still going to be isolated. We might visit them once a week, but the rest of the time they'll still be by themselves. But when you see how people feel, and this is kind of like why we built this company, right? You can see here this just fantastic quote here, right? I'm in quarantine with my best friend. She won't give me any disease. It's a marvel of technology. I'm not alone anymore. And not to say that Ellie Q is a perfect product. She still is a work in progress. But definitely this is what we were hoping for. And I'm sure that there are other teams working on other technologies that can definitely alleviate this sense. And of course, in cases of pandemic, when humans cannot go into people's homes, the importance of having technology that can help grows exponentially. And the last thing I wanted to share with you, and then I'd love to have a conversation, is that due to COVID, we decided to make Ellie Q available to anybody that needs it. There are a few requirements. It needs to be in the United States only. They need to be willing to take part in our research. So somebody on our team is going to call them up every, 2 weeks or so and just ask for feedback on how we can improve the product. And someone needs to help with the install, which is not really hard. But in case you're interested, you have a loved one, you have a neighbor that you're worried about, we're more than happy to make Ellie Q available You can see the link here. You can also see a big banner on the Ellie Q website. While supply is last and the pandemic lasts, we're more than happy to do our share here. So with that, Leah, let's open it to a discussion.
Thank you, Dor. The first question I have from one of our users is, besides the hardware, what's the main difference between your product and Siri or Google Assistant?
Yeah. So basically, most of what I try to explain is the difference, right? These products are not proactive. These other products are not proactive. They do not try to fulfill specific, they're not on a mission to try to meet specific tasks and specific goals that you're trying to achieve on a daily basis. They're not encompassed in a character. They don't have multimodality. And a result of that, you don't see these relationships take place. You know, Alexa will not ask you, how are you feeling today? And remember what you answered and follow up with that. Not because she's trying to sell you a service, but because she takes a genuine interest. And that, at the end of the day, is the heart of it. It's a purpose-built agent in a purpose-built device, targeting only the older population with the goal of helping them deal with isolation, loneliness, and improve their well-being and wellness.
Okay, another question is, it seems like you were early for your times. You know, isolation has really hit us hard with the elderly now during COVID, and you've been developing this product for several years. What made you guys think of it?
Yeah, so I don't think we were early with the times. I think what happened is that us, society, because of COVID, there's like a projector lit on this problem, but it's been with us for a long time. And when you look at the world population, the percentage of elderly was traditionally around 8%. In Japan, we're inching towards 50%. We used to, frankly, our life expectancy was in the 70s. Now it's late 80s. We still finish working at around 65. So there's a whole section of our lives where we are not working and we're alone. And it's much longer than before, hitting a lot more people than before. And that is changing the dynamics we have as a population. So this was our thesis going forward. When you look at the numbers, by the way, I mean, there are all these reports showing that state equals acceleration of dementia, depression, heart disease, even earlier mortality. It costs billions of dollars from a public health perspective. A full 70%, okay, of the healthcare budget in the United States is for people 65 plus dealing with chronic issues and chronic diseases, and isolation exacerbates those. So for us, the business sense was there all along, not to mention kind of the mission of trying to deal with this. And I think the big change is that we're now a lot more aware of that. And I hope, as I mentioned before, that post-COVID, we will continue as a society trying to think solutions to help the elderly.
Thank you, Dor. Thank you all for joining us for this breakout session as part of Our Crowd's Pandemic Innovation Conference. There's a lot more rich content going on after this session, and we invite you all to join it. Thank you all.
Thanks for joining us.